Okay. All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. I'd like to begin by, first of all, welcoming everyone. My name is Ambrose Jackson, the CEO of the 1937 Group, and I'd like to thank you for attending this webinar, and which will be providing an overview of the process to apply for an Illinois dispensary license. I'd like to start off by just sharing that this webinar is being recorded, and it will be shared with all registered attendees and provided as a resource for others who are unable to attend. Also, the materials and information presented during this webinar are for general informational purposes only, and not to be construed as legal advice. I just have to get that out of the way. So I want to talk a little bit about, first of all, the purpose of this webinar. And so this webinar was created along with the 1937 Group Incubator because for many in the general public, the regulated cannabis industry is kind of like a black box, right? The reality is that for those who are fortunate enough to receive a license, it's actually also a black box, right? And that's the issue. I don't know if anyone here has heard the phrase before, we're building the plane while we're flying it, but that is literally my most hated phrase because it's often, or at least I see it often as an excuse for poor planning and execution. However, there is a certain element of truth to that because the reality is that many people in the cannabis industry hold this information close to their chests. So every new operator really does have to figure it out for themselves. And in a state that touts its social equity program and says that it's looking for more increased minority ownership and inclusion in this industry, I think we need to do better than that. And so that's why the 1937 Group, along with the 1937 Foundation and UCIA, are stepping up to host this webinar, as well as provide additional resources to help social equity applicants become successful and really open up successful cannabis businesses. It's not just about even just winning a license. So I want to talk very quickly in terms of providing an overview of what we will be presenting today. First of all, we'd like to introduce the organizations who are hosting this webinar. Secondly, we will provide a high-level overview of the process to apply for and gain a conditional dispensary license, along with tips and other information gained through experience. We will also explain the social equity criteria and approach to determining your status. We will talk about next steps in terms of resources, workshops we will be providing, as well as some more details around the 1937 Group Incubator Program. And then lastly, we will end with Q&A. I want to say that microphones are or have been muted. However, if you do have a question during the presentation, please type it into the Q&A section. Towards the end, as mentioned previously, we will spend time going over the questions that are populated in the Q&A section. Okay, so in terms of who is hosting this webinar, it's a collaboration between three groups, and I will not be the only person that you see presenting today. Various members representing those groups will also be presenting. So the first group is the 1937 Group, which I represent as the CEO. The 1937 Group is an Illinois-based company that has management control and operational control of multiple licenses. We are a social equity group, and we really pride ourselves on really being active and involved in the community, and making sure that we are representing the culture and merging not just cannabis, but also highlighting the connections across industries, including music and art and etc. So the 1937 Foundation is the second group that is co-hosting this event. Eric Ice Gibson is the executive director of the foundation. He is behind the scenes helping out from the IT standpoint, make sure that this webinar rolls smoothly. The foundation, the 1937 Foundation's real aim is to focus around providing awareness and resources for those who have been impacted by trauma, and specifically violence-induced trauma. We were fortunate to win an R3 fund to support our work, and so we're excited about just the ability to, again, further support our community engagement activities. I'd like to go ahead and pass this off to Christina to talk about our third host partner for the night, the United Latino Cannabis Industry Alliance.
Hello, everybody. My name is Christina Colon. I am here on behalf of the United Latino Cannabis Industry Alliance, also known as UCIA. UCIA's vision is to provide a platform and pipeline to influence decision makers, educate the public, and create a presence that promotes equity and while honoring the Latino history and traditions as a cultural pioneer of the plant. I have operated in this space for quite some time. I have worked for the largest cannabis company discussing the social equity criteria that are going to be needed to be eligible to apply for this. And as Ambrose stated, we are just working in collaboration to help the 1937 incubator wherever we can. And today we'll be providing some guidance in the social equity criteria.
Thank you, Christina. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. I'm going to start off with showing you the website where the majority of the information around this process is located, so that you can reference it further. And then I'll actually click on a link and then pass the mic to my brother here, Jason, who's going to walk through this process at a high level. Okay, so I am. So you see here, going to Google, if I were to type in idfpr.com, that brings you to the IDFPR website. This is the department that is responsible for the licensing process for the dispensary program, both medical and recreational. You scroll down here, you'll see cannabis programs. Click that. On the left side, you got adult use, on the right side, medical. So we are talking about adult use licenses. And then this first section right here is where you're going to want to spend a lot of your time initially, right? So information for social equity criteria lottery. And then we've got application information with a number of links to various pieces of information, right? And so for the purpose of this webinar, I'm going to click on the steps for social equity criteria lottery. Okay, and now I will ask Jason to walk us through this document. I will zoom in just a tad here.
Thank you, Brother Ambrose. How do I look over here? Let me make sure that we didn't switch the cameras around. We don't have the production crew with us over here. But hey, evening, everybody. How you guys doing over here? Jason Garcia, I'm an attorney in the space, working with OCIA 1937. And I'm here to talk to you guys about the timeline of what this social equity lottery is going to look like at a very high level. No pun intended. Brother Ambrose missed that one over there. So we're going to go over what the 10 steps are, and then a rough estimate of how long this will take for the conditional licenses to be awarded. I think if you guys are familiar with the previous process, we know that it's been, it was, a lot of people are still waiting, and there's still some new revelations that are going to happen. And so it is pretty cool what's going on over here, where we can actually see and know and be held accountable for the process. And we'll see that it's a better one. First things first, first step that's going to happen is the group formation. Now, this is very important, not only for your application, because what they talk about a group is a different one. We are formed as an entity, but it's also just for the success of your business as you move along in your cannabis venture. So a group over here is defined as an entity. So it's not a partnership. You're going to have to get form and file articles for either corporation or a LLC with the requirements that fulfill the social equity criteria that you'll hear about later today. So that's the first thing. So get your team together and prepare yourself for success. Okay. The second step is the application submission. There's a 2-week window that opens up at the end of the month, January 30 through February 14, and this is where you're going to apply. It's online. The website that Ambrose opened up will probably be a big source of information that you can see when to submit those applications. So the window closes on February 14th, and the third step happens after that is the lottery participant list. This is just going to say that everybody who paid their fee and filed and filled out the application correctly, and this will be released no later than February 21st. After that list is released, the fourth step is that the people who, if someone was left out or they feel something was wrong with the list, there'll be 5 days to contest. After that, the state will have a little bit to go to review whatever has been contested or issues that have been raised, and then they will conduct the lottery to determine the top 55 participants. So we can anticipate, so February 14th, February 21 is the lottery or the list. After 5 days contest, couple weeks, maybe mid-March. You know, again, this is just information. It's not advice. It's not what's going to happen. But be prepared to play the lotto around then. So yeah, fifth step will be the lottery happens after they've had time to contest. So hopefully mid-March. After the lottery, they're going to list the top 55 participants. And from there, the next step is a prove-up period for 45 days. You'll get to provide all the information and documents that you submit in the application, which, you know, we'll talk about later on tonight what those documents and criteria is. In this prove-up period as well, so the state, the Illinois Department of the IDFPR reviews the top 55 applicants to make sure that your paperwork is in order, that your groups are formed tightly, and that you marked all the right box in the application. From there, you have a period. If anything was missing for some reason, the state is going to give all of the lottery participants a period to cure any deficiency. So that's for 10 days. After that, if the participant can cure the deficiency, they'll be awarded the conditional licenses. And from there, that's when the next journey, the bigger journey happens, and then you'll have 365 days to move that conditional license to a full license, adult use license. But that's it in a high level overview. It's a lot more condensed and compact than the first round of adult use here in Illinois. So stay sharp in the next 30 to 45 days to get it in, and yeah, be on the lookout.
Right. Back in there. So for many people on this call, right, you might hear what we're saying and say, yeah, okay, that sounds pretty obvious. There's nothing new here, right? But I think, you know, the purpose of why we're doing this is because, you know, we really want to bring in folks who have no idea what it is that they're being asked to do in order to participate in this process. You know, take us back to 2019, right? 3-4 years ago. Right, that's the position that we were in. Right, we didn't know anything about this process. We didn't know what we were getting into, what to expect, and again, we had to figure it out. But at the same time, you know, 3 to 4 years later, you know, the state has come out with a new process that nobody's seen, and in my opinion, it's actually much better. I think that, you know, if you look at some of the issues that we had the first time around, some of those loopholes, I think, have been closed. If you look at the barriers to entry, I think they've been lowered. And in some instances, even what's been defined as, you know, a social equity applicant or that social equity criteria has been changed, and the bar, in my opinion, has been raised. Right. And so, you know, I think there's a lot of misinformation that I've been hearing about this process, and people just assuming that it's the same thing and assuming like, oh, you got to come up with all this money and, you know, put together all of these SOPs and hundreds of pages of documents before you can even apply. And the reality is that's not true. And so that's what, you know, what we really want to accomplish with this webinar is to help people, have the information not only for themselves, but also to kind of combat that misinformation when they hear it, right? If you think about the first time around with adult use, the lottery, it was a 25 or 200, sorry, $2,500 application fee.
Discount.
Right? Discounted. That was the social equity fee. Right now it's $250. That's a big difference. Previously you could apply for you could submit as many applications as you want. You had individuals and organizations who spent $500,000 stacking the deck so that they came out with many licenses on the back end. This time around, you can only submit one application, right? No principal officer can be on more than one application, right? Now there's 17 BLS regions, and you can pick which one you want to be in, which there's also might be some strategy associated with which BLS region you submit to. But, again, I think that's a big and positive change, right? Outside of that, we've got, what else is that? Trying to think, what else is another major?
The timeline too, to stand up off top is 365 days afterwards. Nothing comes before, it just applies.
The timeline is longer, or just the documentation, not having to provide your social equity documentation before you submit an application is a big deal. That can be a process, pulling that information together. And so, lastly, if you think about just the social equity criteria and the way they define it with criteria A, criteria B, and 51% of your legal entity have ownership needs to be of somebody that meets those criteria. I think, again, that to me is an example of raising the bar and eliminating some of those loopholes that we've seen in previous rounds. And so, I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Christina, who's going to actually dive further into that last point I made around the social equity criteria, A and B, and provide a little bit of insight for those who might not have spent the time to read through it.
Thanks, Ambrose. Are you able to go back and pull up the mock application and then go down so they can read while I go over it kind of, again, high level? So as Ambrose stated, the principal officer of the business entity that's created for this application, the principal officer has to have at least 51% or more of ownership and fit both of these criteria, A and B. And again, like he said, it kind of just takes away from the people that weren't necessarily real social equity applicants who had fronts. And we'll go over that. It's all the way at the bottom. You'll see if you just keep going down. But criteria A really focuses on residency. A lot of it is 5 out of the last 10 years. And for example, if you have lived in an impoverished neighborhood that fits the poverty level of at least 20% of the households, if you've lived there 5 of the last 10 years, then you qualify. If you have been on Medicaid, Social Security income, Social Security disability 5 out of the last 10 years, or have lived in subsidized housing for 5 of the last 10 years, then you qualify under criteria A. Also, if you have 20% of the households in your neighborhood who have SNAP benefits, and all this, as you can see, there's links for the US Census map, and unfortunately it is not user friendly. And that's something that we'll be able to assist with future workshops that we'll be having. But you could click on it, you would put in your address and then find that in like a US Census section, find that if your address fits these criterias, or that if you've been on Medicaid, SSI, or disability for the past 5 out of 10 years, then you fit criteria A. Again, most of that is going to be confirmed using this US Census map. But for the application, you're really just going to be able to click and you won't have to provide any documentation, like Ambrose said. For criteria B, it's a little bit different. It's more on the criminal aspects of if you have been arrested for 500 grams of cannabis or less, or have manufactured, delivered, or possessed with intent to deliver or manufacture up to 30 grams, or if a family member has been arrested, convicted of those same offenses, then you fit criteria B. Also, if you have been shot, and they ask for medical records in regards to that. But again, like Ambrose said, initially for the application, we're just clicking boxes. That's what the mock application looks like. And then you're going to have at least 20 days or so to get your documentation together. But the workshops that we'll be helping with and 1937 group is going to be providing, will be able to assist with those kind of technical assistance. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted me to hit on, because it's pretty lengthy as far as criteria A. It really just hits on finding things in the US Census that hits the criteria. 15% poverty level, 20% households have SNAP. You've lived in subsidized housing for 5 out of the last 10 years or have received SSI, disabilities, or what are the other benefits? Yeah, or live in a low income and low access area where it's hard to find groceries and supermarkets, where I feel like that is more of realistic social equity applicants, such as myself. And it kind of eliminates the front companies and businesses that have actually have won licenses in the previous round. Yeah, I am done.
All right, thank you, Christina.
No problem.
So just to do a quick little recap. So there's two things that anyone would need to do to apply for one of these licenses, right? So the first one is create an LLC, right, or corporation, or if you have one, then you don't need to create one, right? And then the second one is complete the actual application and submit it, right? And so you can see the application here. There's really a lot of places where you just initial. It's a process that, you know, if the first one might have taken hundreds of hours, right? I feel like this one probably takes, you know, maybe an hour or two max. In terms of money, if the first one took tens of thousands of dollars to submit an application, right? This one, you know, I believe you could probably get one submitted for less than $500 if you count not just the $250 application fee, but also the fees associated with incorporating an LLC or a corporation, right? So that's great and all, but you know, I recall when I first started down this journey and I met with a famous cannabis industry lawyer. And one of the things that he told me right out the bat is, you know, if you win a license, you're an automatic millionaire, right? And you know, there's a lot of sentiment with just in general, with folks believing that, you know, like if you win a license, like that's the whole battle and everything is downhill from there. Further along in the process, I also heard other folks tell me after spending 1,000 hours trying to put together this application and submit it, that that's not the hard part. The real work actually begins when you get a license. And after getting to the point where I am right now, as an organization, you know, I do believe that the real work starts once you get a license. And we're seeing those challenges play out right in front of us with those who have won licenses in the first time around. You know, there's issues with not getting funding. There's issues with, you know, not finding a location. There's issues with, you know, just not being able to get organized. There's issues with, you know, infighting within teams and potential lawsuits and things like that. And all along the way, there's not a whole lot of organizations who've been through it that are stepping up to help lead the way. And And so that's really the purpose of, the 1937 incubator program. If you see step number 10 here, right, that's the point where, you're going through all these steps and now you've got a conditional license, right? But, again, that all that does is now that allows you to start working towards actually standing up your dispensary, right? So, you're not able to start selling anything. You've got to, start fundraising. You've got to find a location. You've got to go through special use permitting process. You've got to have, city meetings, and you've got a whole list of processes just to get to the point where, you can begin working on construction documents, right? Which is a process within itself, and getting your permits, right? And then the build out process, and then all of the SOPs.
You need the money.
All the standard operating procedures that you're going to need to have in place to operate, right? There's a lot that, needs to be done, and it's very difficult, to just, hand a social equity license winner one of these conditional licenses and say, all right, here you go, have at it. And so, again, that's why we wanted to form this 1937 Foundation Incubators, is so that, we can share what we've got. We can share what we've learned. We can share our resources, free of charge to anybody who does win a license, because we do believe it's important for, us to have an inclusive cannabis ecosystem here in this state and amongst and others. So with that being said, I just want to talk a little bit about kind of next steps and the timing around those. Hey, Jason, can you pull this up? So outside of today's meeting, for anybody who needs assistance in terms of, well, let me start off with this. We're going to send an email out with resources and information after this meeting. Okay. Outside of that, we will also host another webinar for anybody who is interested in understanding the process of actually incorporating a company, right, an LLC, for anybody who needs to do that and is unaware of the process.
And verify their social equity as well. So,
We'll also be there to help folks verify their social equity status, because again, it doesn't really make sense for you to spend the time and the money even applying if you don't qualify as a social equity applicant. So you're gonna make sure you're gonna want to make sure you go on those links, type in your address, and figure out how it is that you qualify. Now, if you don't qualify, that's fine. Maybe you know somebody who does, right? And you guys can go in a license together, just as long as that other person does qualify and has 51% ownership, right? So outside of that, you want to say something?
yeah, well, before you that's just step one. But you got to make sure that those relationships are one. You are.
Yeah. So I have the attorney in the room that reminding me that if you are going to enter into any type of joint venture or business partnership, you got to make sure that you have your ducks in a row and you do it the right way, and you do seek legal counsel.
Yeah, it's important to the team, legally as well as.
Okay. All right. So January 30th is when the window opens up to submit these applications and essentially apply, right? We will be hosting both on-site and via webinar workshops to help anyone go through this process. Almost even in a format of like office hours, right? So we've established certain days and certain times where you can come sit down with us, ask any questions that you have, get some assistance figuring out if you are a social equity applicant as defined by the IDFPR or not. And if you want to, help you get to the point where we submit the application and click the button together. And so those dates, we will send them out in an email, but those dates are January 30th, which is the day it opens up, from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. February 4th, which is a Wednesday. No, that's a Saturday, from noon to 3 p.m. February 8th, which is a Wednesday, from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. And then February 12th, which is a Sunday, from noon to 3 p.m. Okay, those meetings are likely to take place in the offices of CGG law offices here in the West Loop. Got good access to transit, public transit, as well as a lot of street parking available, or some street parking, I should say, available. However, again, we're open to looking into other locations and if it's beneficial for others. And in addition to that, we will be providing time for you to join via webinar for these workshops. Okay, so with that being said, I think that kind of wraps up just our informational webinar on the process, as well as next steps and resources, which we will continue to send out and share. I want to go ahead and ask Eric, who's on the line. If you are, can you go ahead and give people the opportunity to unmute themselves? Because I do see a hand raised.
Yeah, so Kenneth, you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Pete, how you doing? Yes, I wanted to ask, is the incubator program strictly for dispensaries, or could it also be for consumption lounges as well?
That's a good question. So I would say, right off the top of my head, right now it's focused around the dispensaries. However, if you're interested in doing a consumption lounge and you want to talk about it, like, we can talk, because we're in the process of standing up a couple ourselves, right? And so, again, it's not a business model that is like just readily out there. It's still kind of an emerging business model, and so if you want to, kind of talk or collab on some different ideas, we're definitely open to that.
Definitely. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. I see next hand, Oz.
Oh.
Or is that OZ? Or is it Ounce? I see you've unmuted yourself. Are you able to speak, Oz?
Hello?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, it's just my first name and last name for the initials. But based off of Kenneth's question, so does that also apply for the cultivation license for craft?
Can I ask you a clarifying question? Are you talking about like a future craft grow license application round, or are you referencing perhaps that you currently have a craft grow license?
No, for future.
Yeah. We will definitely be launching an incubator to help folks with the future craft grow license applications. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. All right. I see next hand, Adrian. Can you unmute yourself?
Hey man, how's it going? So I had actually 3 questions here. Why not medical? Why is it only recreational? And also, what makes a good team? I know you just mentioned you gotta think ahead for when you're building your team. But what does make a good team? What do you want to have when you're setting up the LLC? And then lastly, how do you check and really, what's a good way to determine what region once eventually in hopes if you win, how do you determine a good region?
Yeah, those are all good questions. I see Jason wants to maybe you want to jump in.
Sure, I got you.
All right. So the first question is around, why are we talking about adult use dispensaries and not medical?
Yes. Hey, Adrian.
Hey man.
So as far as only adult use and not medical, that's what's currently allowed by statute. That's the law right now. So the only available licenses, you can't go pursue a medical license right now. It's the adult use application. These are 55 licenses, pure adult use. That's really what that has something to do with how the taxes work for a medical establishment rather than adult use establishment. You know,
Okay.
so it is what it is right now for the law, you know, so.
So
Yeah,
I will,
that's what it is right there.
yeah, I will say though, I think there are a few medical dispensary licenses that are like available, but like being held by the state, but they have not announced a process yet as to how they will award them to anyone.
Right.
Oh, okay. Got it.
And the second one, you're talking about team, right? So of
Yeah.
course, there's just the pure, the legal definition, the black and white definition that the state put out, that you read about the social equity criteria, and then the formation of it. So your percentages needs to be proper. But beyond that, I mean, it's these are people that you're going to be tied to,
Right.
to do a very, it's no easy industry, and you guys are going to be walking this path together in those, and you're kind of tied to each other with, you can't transfer any interest until you're operational as of now, so
Okay.
you want to make sure that your partners are right, so talk it out, what I mean, come up with deals. I mean, try to go, seek advice of an attorney, not just because I'm an attorney, but that's what you should be doing when you're venturing on a multi-million-dollar business, so, use your resources well. Right?
Yeah, I would add though, when it comes to the team, right, just in terms of like characteristics,
Mhm.
right? Going back to Jason's point of, you're going to be tied to these people, so you need people on your team that are going to like roll up their sleeves and like do the work and do the hard work, do the dirty work, right? You need people who are going to seek the information that they need to answer questions that they have, right? Like, so people who are inquisitive and seeking out like the answers to certain things, right? Because there's going to be a lot there, and you can't just sit on your hand. Nobody's going to give you this stuff, right? So you got to have people that are go-getters, that are thirsty for knowledge. They're going to go ahead and get it, and they're going to roll up their sleeves and learn it, right? There's some technical skills that are helpful, right? So,
Okay.
like if you have somebody on your team like has some sort of maybe a finance background or something, to that effect that can help, right? Because you're gonna need to, you're gonna need to put together projections, right? Like when it's time to go raise money and talk to people that are, potential investors, you're gonna need to have sound assumptions, right? And the spreadsheets that really, that make sense, right? And you can speak to, you're gonna, to that point, you don't necessarily need this, but I mean, it's good to have somebody who, has some sort of like project management skills, right? They can, develop PowerPoints, right? They can speak publicly, right? Because there's so much that needs to get done, right? It's like, you're gonna be continually missing things and having things fall through the cracks, unless you have some way, to organize it or somebody on your team with those skills. So, I could go on and on, right? But at the end of the day, it's just like, for me, my approach is just thinking about what I like, what I'm good at, and like what I'm not good at, and just trying to find people, what I'm saying, to align with or collab with who are good at what I'm not.
Right. Okay.
So the last question.
What was the last question?
Yeah. So
Sorry.
how do you check? Like, can we check as of now, or do we gotta wait till later? But then later, though, how do you determine a good region to pick? How are those regions also set up? Like, it's interesting.
Yeah, well, what first things first, check out the map, and Christina, you want to jump on that one right there?
Nice.
You got to know your state, know the business, know your state, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna answer that. So there's a map that the state has designated and kind of broken up into 17 different regions. And honestly, same way that you're picking the team, you got to think of like, are you willing to live in Peoria for the next 5 years or travel to Peoria? Or do you believe you see some opportunities in Champaign or Southern Illinois? So that's really up to you to decide. Of course, the metropolitan region of Chicago is going to be a little bit more probably popular, but the upside is that you can only put one application in. Whereas before, You could put in as many applications and as many BLS regions as you wanted to. So I would say, think about it like that. Where are you willing to move? Where are you willing to work at? As well as check out the opportunities. I know that some people who are looking at BLS regions to apply for are looking at if it's bordering a different state, that they may have some opportunities to come in and travel.
Yes.
Wisconsin, Indiana, states that aren't legal, but you know, it's a recreational license. So as long as you're 21 and up, you can come and purchase. So I would say just think like that when you're picking your BLS region, but it's up to you at the end of the day.
Okay, and just real quick to so because you only get one, everybody gets one, basically one vote or one chance, right? There's no higher chances, like you said, Chicago's probably going to be popular, the city. So there's no like other best chances, you know, anything is pretty much even.
No. So, I mean, all right. So my opinion is this. If you apply in the Chicago area, in that BLS region, BLS 5, you're probably going to have the least probability or likelihood of winning this lottery and winning a license, right? And that's just because, as Christina said, like a lot of people are going to apply, a lot of people are going to gravitate to it. In my opinion, it's going to be disproportionate, right? And there's going to be other BLS regions, like we'll say further downstate, who seem to be less desirable to some folks, and as a result, they're not going to want to apply there, right? So if you apply there, there's going to be less balls in that lottery, and you'll have a higher chance of winning a license in one of those areas. And you know, again, and this is my opinion, right? You got to understand that, you know, things change, they could play out differently than what I'm thinking in my head, right? But the other thing too is just like you also got to know, you got to understand the market, right? Like Christina mentioned, border states. There's a lot of folks who applied to and won licenses on border states, right? And that was great when Illinois was the only one that had adult use, you know, cannabis, right? Now, as an example, Missouri is going live with adult use. And so, you know, for the last few years or the last 8 years, perhaps, a lot of Missourians have been traveling across the border to East St. Louis and the suburbs around there, you know, to get their weed, right? And now, you know, again, in my opinion, with the tax structure being lower in Missouri, I think, you know, the traffic is probably going to end up flowing the other way. And so, you know, that's going to hurt those businesses on the Illinois side, right? So, you know, you got to take things like, nobody knows what's going to happen, right? I could be on the Indiana border and think, oh, I'm straight for 5 years, and then, you know, they go wreck a year and a half from now. Who knows, right? So it's kind of a little bit of a game you play. Call it forecasting, call it strategy, call it anything you want, really. But you know, there's just a lot of factors you take into. If you go to a downstate or mid-state, you know, what's the population? How many other dispensaries are currently there? How many are allotted to be in that region? You know, so you know, all of those factor into, you know, the long-term profitability of your potential company.
Okay. And real quick, just to add on to that, so if I know they mentioned something earlier about you had to live in the region or in the area more or less, was it 5 to 10 years? If I live between another place in Chicago and the other place is like 2 years, would I still qualify for that other place, or no? Would it be Chicago's?
So as long as you can prove that you resided in that location for 5 out of the last 10 years.
5, it has to be.
They don't have to be consecutive. Yeah, they don't have to be consecutive.
Okay, but at least 5.
Yep.
Okay, all right, cool. All right, no, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian. All right, we'll move on to the next one. I see a hand raised by Francisco Nunez.
Yeah, hey, Ambrose, thank you. I have a few questions. If just a quick answer is good enough, we don't have to get into detail. Number one question is, let's say you have an applicant that meets the requirements for the A part and the B part. Of course, they're going to let's say they 51% owner, 49% partner, right? Can their wife also qualify because they are related to a person that was
So
a big?
yeah, so my understanding is this is all individual based, right? So, you know, if I'm interpreting your question right and speaking about another hypothetical, right, is like let's just say the husband and wife both qualify because they were living together for those 5 years, you know, they would be eligible to submit two separate applications, right? With
Right.
two separate LLCs.
Got it. Okay, perfect. That is what I was asking. Now, secondly, is there a limit of how many applications a minority owner can participate in?
Yes, because any owner is considered as a principal officer. Okay, by having ownership, you are falling into the bucket of now being a principal officer. And as a principal officer, your social security, which needs to be submitted with the app, can only be on one application.
Okay, whether you're the majority or not.
Correct.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, so let's see. So I think Billy is next. Okay. You see the unmute button should be at the top right, maybe? I don't think I'm able to unmute you. I don't know, Eric, are you able to unmute Billy or no?
No, not from my end. Sorry.
All right, Eric, Billy, how about you can you type in your question in the Q&A at the top? No? About the chat? Is there a chat function? All right, just shoot me an email afterwards. All right. My email address, just for the record, is ambrose.jackson@1937group. All right. All right, cool. All right, so we'll move on to Janice. I believe you unmuted yourself, Janice. You there? All right. We can come back.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I had a question. Do you have any lawyers that you could recommend? And also, are we allowed to come? I live in Springfield, so am I allowed to come to the meeting in Chicago?
So the first question is no, I don't know any lawyers. Just kidding.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Jason here, my co-presenter, is the lawyer that I would recommend, and we can put you in touch with. Yeah, he's been very successful in previous rounds. And as far as coming to Chicago, yeah, you can definitely do that. You know, or if you don't want to, we can just, you know, we can hop on a web chat and share screens and do it that way.
Okay. Can you send me your information, please?
Which information specifically would you like?
So I can contact you personally to get on the website, or is it ambrose.jackson@1937?
Yeah, at 1937group.com. We're gonna send you we're gonna send you an email also, and it'll have you'll be able to get the information for the webinar. So don't worry, we'll be in touch. All right.
Okay.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
OZ.
Hey man, yeah, a couple questions. You mentioned something about the LLC meeting last time or earlier. Were those the dates of the 30th, the 4th, the 8th, and the 12th?
No, No, we're
Okay.
gonna have one before then, between now and the 30th.
Okay.
And the reason is that, you know, when you submit for your LLC to be incorporated, there is a turnaround time. It can take, you know, like what, a week and a half, unless you want to pay extra money to have it expedited. So yeah, we wanna if you need help, we want to get you down that path sooner rather than later.
Okay, sounds good. And then also, is Jason's info gonna be in the email that you guys are gonna send?
Yeah, we'll add attorney information to the email.
Okay, and then I can contact you personally through that email, correct?
Yeah,
The AmbroseJackson1937group.com.
ambrose.jackson@1937group.com.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, sounds good, man. Thank you.
So, all right. I don't see any other hands raised. Does anyone else have any under the last minute questions before we call it a wrap? All right. Well, with that being said, I do want to thank everyone again for joining us. I hope that some people found this helpful, and you know, we look forward to continuing to hear from you and work with you. All right, everyone, have a good night. Okay.
Thank you.